and unworkability. We might even bring a bit of standard relationship into this unworkability one today, because unworkability is what brings a lot of relationships undone. You might find that things could be workable, but the person that you're trying to work those things with is just unworkable. They don't want to cooperate, they don't want to change. And this is what happens with covert emotional incest. In my last relationship, I pointed out on at least a dozen occasions that there was something. I said, look, I don't want to interfere with your maternal relationship, the relationship between yourself and your son. It's not my business to do that. But it is my business if it's affecting our relationship, either directly or indirectly. I noticed some unusual behaviour from the young man, and I said to her, and I'm not frightened to talk about this because it's real life stuff. I said to her, there's something going on that I'm not comfortable with that I need to bring to your attention between yourself and your son. I said, but I want to be very careful about this. I don't want to trigger you maternally, or set off your maternal alarms, because nobody comes out of that unscathed. Once you start setting off maternal alarms, you're going to be in deep trouble, because that blots out any rationale. Once you trigger a woman maternally, you can blot out any rationale, because there won't be any. Maternal alert, maternal alarm, maternal triggers immediately blot out all threats. You have to understand that, so you need to be very, very sensitive how you approach the subject when it comes to a parent and a child, because 99.9% of the time you are going to end up assassinated. You have to understand this. You've got to go around the maternal connection to the dysfunction. So I thought about this, and I'd looked at what was going on. My goodness, she knows that I've come out of a covert emotional incest dual relationship, marriage actually. The marriage ended as a result of it. And now she's displaying it in a more ferocious way, in a more bonded and more active way than the woman I was married to. Now, I don't know what I'm doing. I just don't know what I'm doing to trigger these relationships between the parents and their sons, the mother and their son. But this son said to, well, let me come back a bit. So I said to her, I said, whenever your son walks into the room, you seem to jump, you jump. In like a stand to attention, like there's a general walked into the room or something. You jump and are ready for service. Or you jump and there's this emotional connection that starts, and it consumes all output and intake. I said, it seems to me like you're spellbound by your son, the way you look into his eyes, the way you move around him. And I have to give it to the poor woman, she listened. Well, hang on a sec. Again, there's a phrase that's not fair. I can't say poor woman, because the woman made a choice to put the son in this position. They give them an authority that they ought not to have. And it comes out of a need for a connection. And they choose a child rather than a partner, or they have partners and it fails. So they go back to the child, and the child's just a ricochet. And this damages the child. And when I say child, I'm talking, I've got to see, it's not just, these children can be young adults. They can be adults. So we've got to find a name for these covert emotional active, incestual active children. What can we say? We'll find something. So I made it clear that there's a connection going on between you and your son that has gone beyond that in a negative way, beyond your maternal connection. And it's probably a result of the breakdown that you've had with his father, which was as a result of alcohol and other, I'd say, other substance abuse, which is a subject on its own, codependency through substance intake, etc., which only adds fuel to the fire. So she took this on board, and I could see that she was trying to sort this out. And one night we were watching a show, and forget what it was, but we were watching a show, might go on about our business, and there's a tremendous, all of a sudden, tremendous knock on the door. Come and get me something to eat. I'm hungry. And I looked at her and she looked at me, and I said, well, it's not my business. And up she jumped. And all she really had to do was say, get it yourself. But that's not possible in one of these. That's just not possible when a relationship's formed itself to this point where the young man, and might I say man, demanding something to eat. Get me something to eat. Don't worry about what you're doing or who you're with. Get me something to eat. So by this time I'm going, okay, this guy's starting to disintegrate. He's desperately trying to get his mother's attention. She's really not doing anything to confront or correct the situation. Her way of dealing with things usually was to, well, if it was confronting, I actually don't know, because I never really saw anything constructive by way of confronting with wisdom. She always gave the impression that peace is found through silence and time. Well, it is to a point, but if a ship's sinking and you don't fix the problem, you can sit there peaceful and silent, but the ship will sink. So a mission doesn't fix anything. I said to her after a few, there were several instances of this, and then he started to need to see her when I was due to see her. Then she said to me, I think we're seeing each other too much. I haven't got time to deal with this 23 years old. And I said to her, how does that work? Because it's not going to work for me. I gone, if this problem keeps intruding into our time, it's going to be a serious problem. And I really don't think she knew what to do, because nothing really happened. She was telling me that things were resolved that weren't resolved. This kid was manifesting all sorts of terrible behaviour and attitude, and he's trying to find ways of assassinating my character. And you will, covert emotional incestual people will have no hesitation in assassinating your character with the parent or the child. That's the object. We've got to take this person out. We've got to restore our isolated relationship. This is the attitude of it. All outsiders have to go. So I'm watching this kid deteriorate. It was as clear as day, and it was accelerating, and it was getting worse. And I'm watching this woman do nothing. Now I said to her, and this is a hard one. I've really done a post-mortem on all this. I said, well, sorry, I was just checking the camera. I said, well, this is intensifying. I said, your son's displaying behaviour that's not of a 23-year-old. It's more of a 8-year-old. I know that sounds extreme, but that's how bad it deteriorated. And I knew I was in trouble because she come to me and she said, so-and-so has told me and confronted me that I'm neglecting him because of you. So here's a case where the young man has come to the mother and said to the mother, you're neglecting me because of the man that you're in a relationship with. So things are getting really bad. I said to her, okay, this is what I said to her. I said, okay then. This is how unworkability works. It just wasn't workable. So I said to her, okay, you haven't got any boundaries in place with this guy. You've given him authority that shouldn't be his. He is not going to let you enjoy this relationship because he's developed a dislike towards me through his idea that you're neglecting him because of me. I mean, this is really toxic stuff, isn't it? It's toxic as it can get. And this guy thought he was tough. I mean, you've got to be kidding me. Anyway, I'm watching all this and I'm going, all right. Eh? And I said to her, I don't know what you're going to do because now it's getting to a point maternally where I will be, if I say anything further, I'll be assassinated. That's just how it works. And you mix maternal love with a maternal dysfunction and you're automatically psychologically assassinated by these people. Because you're attacking their DNA, you're threatening their DNA. Excuse me, that's why it's unworkable. That's why it's so unworkable. Because you're up against DNA, blood thicker than water, and they'll work on you while you're not there. Somebody has to take the blame for the trouble. Well, to cut a long story short, I went to see her on a Friday night. Got there early in the afternoon. I look forward to seeing my woman. And she says to me, I need to have one of these meetings with my son or he might commit suicide. Well, straight away, there's a red flag. If somebody's, capable of committing suicide, immediately you should have professional help, immediately. But this woman had set her up as the answer to all the problems, but she wasn't. I'd been there long enough to see that she actually, as a matter of fact, I'm sorry, but she was a cause of a lot of the problems, and that's why in the end I decided that it was time to separate. Because now her problems, for me, her solutions were becoming problems for me because they weren't solutions at all. It was just solutions, covert emotional incest, disguising itself as a solution, but it wasn't a solution at all because I'd been there long enough to see that none of it was working. and that it had gotten to the point where this kid needed a male mentor or something of this kind, because the feminine solutions were only enabling this kid's infantileness, because you're dealing with infantility, infantile behaviour. That's what's wrong with a lot of these young men today. They haven't had the masculine initiation. They think they have, but they haven't. You can tell by their behaviour, by their emotional condition. I mean, this guy thought he knew everything and he was unreal. Well, you're not, because you're acting like a child. Do you understand what I mean? This guy was acting like a child. So he's trying to find a way of assassinating me so then I can be removed from the situation. So I go down on this Friday night and they got to have this meeting, and I said to her, well, something inside me personally said, you just need to leave and do something else. Because the weekend before this, he ruined 2 of the nights that we were going to have together, and all through nonsense. So I'm starting to think this woman's out of touch. She has been maternally triggered. Obviously the kid's working on her and undermining anything I've built in the relationship. And this is also one of the consequences, one of the terrible, horrible, toxic consequences of getting caught up with these people. Because once you're in and you're connected and you're trying to build this relationship, it can be pulled apart in a week, in a day. You may not even have an argument with this person. I was married for 5 years. Hardly had an argument to this woman before this one. And after the son moved in, 10 weeks later, the marriage was, and I ended the marriage. It got so bad, the triangulation and strangulation as a result of it. Well, in this case, once it started, after the confrontation, the relationship lasted a week and a half, and I said, nope, I'm out. I'm not doing this. This is not for me. It's as simple as that. She never said a word. Which was proof that she defaulted back to her maternal security, which was with the trouble, which was with the son. They don't want a solution when it comes to maternal bonds, these types. The son was more important to her because he put on the performance. He was the one that was causing the drama, and I think this woman liked a bit of drama, to be honest. She said she didn't. She was all about peace, but she seemed to have been on board with this rubbish and drama that this child was creating. So there was a lot of dysfunction and confusion and lies and things that were going with this. This all goes hand in hand, you see. You've got to be aware of this. See, not enough people are aware of covert emotional incest. This can happen in marriages when the parents are still together. The one or the other of the partner will use the child as a shield. It's called shielding, where the child or children are used as a shield because one of the or both of the partners just couldn't be bothered with each other. So the centre of the relationship becomes the children, to the exclusion of any intimacy or affection between the two. It's all spilled out onto the children and expected from the children, all but sex. And this is how physical incest starts as well. It can go to that, the depths that can go to those horrible depths. But anyway, we're working with emotional incest. So the unworkability now, the problem for me, had become the solution for her. The child that was, or the young man that was causing the problem, because apparently he was neglected by his mother because of me, 23-year-old. That shouldn't have stopped. What's wrong with this? The person causing the problem for me had actually become the solution for her, even though she knew he was the problem. Can you see how triangulated it gets? But it doesn't finish triangulated. The triunity turns into a duplicity. You get cut out. And I've known men and women that have been in these relationships, battled with these relationships with you for years. Years and years. Only to find themselves standing there on their own, wounded, beaten, defeated, confused, resentful, bitter, angry, volatile, completely disheveled because of the bond between the parent and the child. The dysfunctional, emotional, ancestral bond, unbreakable bond between the parent and the child. Well, I stayed for this meeting on the Friday night, and I've spoken about this before. It's so vivid to me. And away they went. And I thought, this is a load of nonsense. This is just this child wanting the attention of his mother, despite her arrangements. And I said, it's more than that. Now the mother is giving him the authority to do that, despite the arrangements that we had made, and despite the fact that I'm turning up. And I thought, blow you. I want to hear what's going on here, see how serious it is, and see if it's worth all this kerfuffle. Oh, he's going to commit suicide and all this nonsense. My attitude was, if you're going to commit suicide, and I know it's a little bit hard, but do you want to be cremated or do you want to be buried? You asked, let me know. If you're going to commit suicide, do you want to be cremated or do you want to be buried? Because I haven't got time for that nonsense in the world in which we live. Beautiful, wonderful world. With all the help and food and everything else and comforts you could ever want. So the big brother comes down and goes, oh mate, you'll be all right. And he goes back upstairs, and I thought, well, that's probably going to be the end of the meeting. But not so. I decide that it's time for me to leave. These people have lost, well, she's lost her way with me, and I up and leave. As I'm walking out, I look across, they're entertaining each other. Didn't want me to have anything to do with it. Thought, you rude pair of dysfunctional people. The more I heal from it, the more I see how deeply entrenched the covert emotional incest was, and how after it being confronted, the more determined that it was. This is, see, we might be able to do a video on the determination of covert emotional incest, because it doesn't stop. It just gets more determined. Horribly determined. Destructively determined. Extraordinarily determined. So I walk out. I see her gazing into this boy's eyes with a love and an intensity to die for. It was profound. It's not the way a mother should be looking into her son's eyes. It was just, I've just gone, this is off. This is full-blown manifesting covert emotional incest, just full-blown, without conscience, manifesting. Terrible. So I leave. I go home. I go to bed, I think, well, this relationship's just about had it. She's going in what I call opposite directional dysfunction disorder, when all they do is go in the opposite direction to what they should. And when that starts in a relationship, you know it's time to go, because they've lost their respect. So I get a phone call about an hour later. What happened to you? I said, well, I left. What do you think? She goes, well, me and so, this is the son, think you were rude. I said, well, let's get it in its right perspective. I've come down there to see you. It's Friday night. You're out the back talking gibberish and rubbish to your son so that he don't commit suicide, which means he needs professional help, doesn't it? I said, honestly, I said, okay, I was prepared to see what these talks that you have with her are about, and when I got the content of it so ridiculous, I decided to leave. Oh, well, it might have been, you know, ridiculous to you, but it's not to us. Well, good for you. It's Friday night. I'd come down to see you and you flaked. She basically flaked, deliberately flaked, under the disguise of, I need to talk to my son. Well, this kid, honestly, this young man, this baby, had undermined the relationship so deeply and so well that now he was getting the attention of this woman on a Friday night. I tell you, I've seen some horrible, ugly things in my time, but covert emotional incest, it's up there with the best one. Pretty bad. And as a matter of fact, I'm going to compare it to your girlfriend having an affair, because they're not connected to you, they're connected to somebody else. And it's, as we say in the case of covert emotional incest, it's the child of the parent. It's just so horribly demoralizing. Well, we agreed to disagree, and I knew this was the beginning of the end, because I could already tell that she was defaulted back to the way she was before I come along. And well, she didn't really need me for anything other than masculinity and some company and everything else she was doing and had been doing on her own. I weighed all this up. She's now gone into covert emotional incestual dysfunction, maternal alarm, maternal alert, and maternal defense. And this is the sort of stuff you're not going to be able to combat. I said to her, because it continued, I went round the next weekend and we had a relatively good time. I noticed things weren't right. The son was continuing his deterioration. I could see that she was concerned about him. I'd gotten to the point where I couldn't be bothered, to be honest. And he disliked me so badly. It was like an enmity. He talked to me, but underneath he hated me. And these boys had been trained by her and themselves to dislike middle-aged men, which had nothing to do with me. So I said to the woman, I think we need a week's break. But when I thought about it, 3 days in, I thought about it, and she'd made no effort whatsoever to fix anything that I asked might be dealt with, because she felt too sorry for her son. And this was starting to really aggravate and irritate me by this time. As a matter of fact, I just couldn't be bothered. I knew that I needed to go. She wasn't capable of fixing it. This is what you've got to understand when you're dealing with covert emotional incest. If they're not fixing it, they're not capable. It's unworkable. So I got to the third day. This woman made no effort whatsoever. As a matter of fact, she just turned into a ghost. Horrible ghost. And I said to her, I think it's time to separate. And we did. I never heard another word from that woman again. How's that for value? How valuable are you? Well, you're not. Not when it comes to DNA and children and all that. You're not valuable at all. And you've got to call it. You've got to call it. You've got to take the wounds and the abuse and start healing straight away. It can take years to heal from the damage that covert emotional incest can do to somebody that gets into a relationship with one of these people that are determined to keep it. You've got to accept the unworkability and say to yourself, righto, I'm beat, I don't want to deal with this, I can't accept it. And count your losses and get your attachment trauma therapy and all your therapy and counselling